Okay, first I need clarification.
Hmm.
Are you talking people that do have mental health or the people that are trying to help mental health?
People who are trying to help is what I had in mind when I asked the question.
Okay,
Really, it's bridging the
okay,
gap between both. Hmm.
both, right.
Hmm.
Okay, I'll answer as I'm here to see where this leads.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm open to a conversation and even participation
Hmm.
at this point. So that's my
Okay.
answer.
Okay.
So, Michael, I just want to clarify because I just looked at the matrix and I see this number you're talking about. It appears to me it's the row that says developing or development work. Is that
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
Okay. So that work is bridging that gap in terms of like mental health and spirituality.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great space to be, and I would be interested in that for sure.
Very good. Very good. And I know Kylea is. We've been having that conversation before. Yeah, I mean, do you want to say anything to that, Kylea? Since that's where our greatest natural alignment is.
I mean, that's my bread and butter. Like
Hmm.
that's like I have been doing that forever. Because I'm in both worlds. So like I've studied all of the like as many as I could possibly get my hands on. I've studied the traditional sort of like psychology world, healing like healing practices, whether it's CBT therapy, DBT, EMDR, all of those things. Like, but then also I do the spiritual aspect, and a lot of what I do with people is a mix of both. But I'm also someone who's very comfortable being transparent with people in the mental health field and being like, yeah, so my spirit guides, and my
Hmm.
therapist is like, right, the spirit guides, yeah, okay. So like, but they know this about me from the get-go. Everyone knows that that's who I am as a human being.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's my bread and butter. That's very much my world. It's a world I'm very comfortable in, and I know kind of how to speak in both languages, I guess.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Yeah, yeah. What comes up for me too, because the next one that was high, almost as highly rated, the 84%, which again had most of us participating in that one. Yeah, I think you did too, Amy, because you and I had that one-on-one conversation with that, was the living library, having the living library conversations. So what I have been asking recently of people who have been participating in the living library is I've been asking them a commitment to make a commitment, and that commitment is, would you be willing to watch your own living library conversation that you had with me? Would you be willing to watch that and really listen to yourself?
Right. No problem.
Okay, very good. Okay, great,
I think
great.
I
So,
already have. I don't know if I did watch the whole thing, but I think I have.
oh
I
yeah,
have
did you
two.
watch your own living library conversation?
Yeah, I think I did too.
Okay, great. So then I'm going to invite you to watch it one more time and maybe even take notes this time. Take
Oh,
notes of what what seems alive for you or what's new for you. So it's almost like you are going to be the reader of your own book. And so we'll start practicing those skills. So that's one of the commitments that I'll be asking to kind of move forward. So another thing I noticed now too, which was very high rated, 83%, was the conversation about the economic reform and the kairotic flow of what we're doing as well too. What I noticed was when you take out the participants that haven't filled out the entire matrix, and you looked at those who did fill it out, Ray, Nini, Becky, and myself. The one that was really the one of the most interest was the economic question, the economic reform question. So one of the things that I've decided to do, and I'm going to invite all of you, if you want to, if you want to be panelists for this, I'm going to be doing a 12 series conversation, and there's no commitment to doing all 12. Just you show up to whichever one you want. But I'm going to be doing the presentation on natural law and the forgiveness of all debt, and that's going to start to put it in explicit terms how to raise funding doing these kinds of conversations and participating in these conversations. So so that's something that that I'm just going to plant the seed with tonight. But what I would like to invite is I would like to invite you, Ray, to reach out to Nini and maybe having a living library conversation together about whether or not you would like to be panelists on this, because both of you rated very highly on wanting to pursue this course of action. So if Nini is willing, would you be willing to do that as well?
Yeah, I think I might need a little more clarity about what the living library conversation means in terms of, like, I don't know if there's structure to it or if there's like a time, or yeah, I just need a little more clarity about that. And then,
sure. No, there's no set parameters because at this point it's really just an appreciation conversation. It's really just about listening, reflecting back, what you heard, what you appreciate, asking clarifying questions. So so I'll be having a one-on-one with Nini after this, and so that's going to be one of the commitments I'll be asking her as well, if she is willing.
okay.
So
and is it a recorded conversation that would be shared?
Does not have to be recorded at all. No.
Okay. Cool.
Unless you want to, but no, that's certainly not a requirement. I trust that you will be aware of the time that you spend doing that conversation.
Yeah. I was just wondering because you said living library, and I know you've been hosting them, so I just wasn't sure what the intention was. So it's just an appreciation conversation about our interest in economic reform and like how we and whether we want to join the panel that you're starting or that you're going to host.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Great. So and then on the other side, Amy and Kylea, I'd like to ask if the two of you would be interested in getting together for a living library conversation and talking about specifically about being in groups or having living library conversations with mental health professionals.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I'm always down to talk.
Okay, great. Then I'll let you guys make that commitment offline, and we'll go from there. Great. So good. So those are some of the commitments based on that. So yeah. So I want to throw out some of the values that we have that we had rated highly on across the board. So one of them was the nonviolent communication practices. So let's just do a quick round robin. When you think of nonviolent communication, what do you think of, or what what do you think that entails?
I think of Marshall Rosenberg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm actually like working through Jay Orkenser's book, Say What You Mean, with my friend group right now, because none of them have been exposed to NVC before, and so we're actually that's a thing we're actively doing right now.
Very good. Yeah. What I think of is.
I picture. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ray. Go for it. Nope. I interrupted. You go for it.
No, you're fine. I know I'm I turned my video off because I'm in a weird spot. But I picture Marshall Rosenberg with his little puppets, the giraffe and the jackal.
Yeah.
When I think of NBC, I always imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think of like a performance aspect of it. Yeah. What comes up for me is having conversations, separating out fact from judgment or story from feelings. So that's something that when I practiced that technique, that specific technique in the Circle of Miracles community, it worked out. It worked out well, where I really learned a lot of information and I learned a lot of truth. But what it did was sometimes the truth got a little bit too intimate, and that's kind of what kind of instigated or catalyzed a parting of the ways with leadership there. So it's it's helped me to really be sensitive, sensitive to when we're touching on values that are important to people, and when certain values are not important to people, how that does kind of break things up a little bit. And I'm trying to be more responsible with that, and I'm still learning a lot about that. So just off the top of your head, Amy, what comes up for you when it comes to nonviolent communication?
Yeah, I don't have any references to it. I really don't. I don't have any reference. I can't. That's the reason why I'm not putting my 2 cents in, because I really don't have anything.
Got it. Yep, no problem. And that's perfectly fine. And it's great. And that's part of why we're here as well too, is to learn about it. I don't have the formal training of Marshall Rosenberg, but I do have a lot of other skills and tools that have been inspired by that work. So so I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't have a lot of academic background in it, but I have experiential.
I just know by personal experience. That's it. And I can give you that much. I do it constantly with, my son is high functioning Asperger's. He has mental health. All my kids have mental health issues. So I mean, when they go triggering, I know how to calm them down. But I mean, have I been formally trained on it? No, I just know how to deal with them intuitively. That's all. I can't boast about that I know anything about it, but somehow I can do it. That's all I know.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said with having intuitive abilities with that as well, because sometimes there's I've noticed that there's been, I don't know, kind of a little bit of shaming when it comes to trusting the intuitive rather than the academic. So yeah, I trust you know what you're doing.
I do.
Yeah. Curiosity was the next big one. So we'll do another round robin here. What are you most curious about going forward? What are you most curious about that these conversations might have inspired you for? Yeah, right.
Well,
I'm sorry. Amy. Go ahead, Ray. Go ahead, Ray.
Sorry, I was trying to hear me. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
In a bad spot. Okay.
Oh, I think we're losing you now. Okay, I think we lost you. Oh. Yeah, we're not getting any. I'm not getting anything. Are you hearing anything, Eileen?
You're in the dead zone, babe.
Okay, we'll try again in a few minutes, right? But definitely want to get back to you with what's.
Yeah, you guys are frozen for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can
Leah
hear.
knows the dead zone.
Okay. Well, we can hear you. Okay. Go ahead, Amy. Curiosity.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Just being curious, you know,
Mhm.
the curiosity of being curious, you know, seeing how far I can go, being the best version of me means I have to be the student, right? And have that childlike curiosity to continue learning from myself and my experiences to be the best version of me. So, and that's my whole goal in life, is to encourage others to do the same. It's been my passion, my life passion. I have my own business named that, The Art of Becoming You. So curiosity is, you know, what can we not do, is more what I'd like to think, you know. And it's based on your own preference and your own boundaries that you put on yourself anymore. I think if we had tapped into it right, what can we not do? I can't wait to see how far it goes, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Hi, Leah, what are you curious about?
I would say probably how far these conversations can expand and what kind of like, you know, understanding or seeds or like in its curiosity in itself that can spark in other people who, I think especially in the people who don't necessarily like engage in these kind of spaces or kind of conversations normally. Like for me, this stuff is awesome, but it's also very much a part of my everyday life. Like this is something I just typically engage with regardless of where I am, what I'm doing, what's happening. Like this is most of my circle. I do this kind of stuff with. But I'm curious to see when we're encountering people that maybe this is the kind of stuff that they have to do with, or this isn't like, you know, part of their norm. What these conversations can inspire, what they can bring about, what they can facilitate. And then like what levels of growth, I guess, could come for everyone who decides to participate and sort of like take the challenge on.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I'm curious about how that will expand too. Like, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for someone to develop that part of the brain which you know, which does monitor curiosity? Because when most people, especially when they're kind of engaged in this competitive, linear thinking society, to engage in curiosity and to engage in appreciation, it literally stretches their brain. So it can be very daunting. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm curious about is I'm curious if we're all going to take the next step in watching our own living library conversations, and curious about what it's going to take to share that, and to share that kind of that space, you know, to commit to being a listener, you know, for an hour if that's possible. And yeah, that's what I'm curious about. I'm curious about what is it going to take to commit to being a listener for just an hour. Ray, why don't we try to check in with you here and see how the connection is?
I think it's pretty good now.
Good.
I'm a little bit afraid to move from where I'm at this moment.
No.
My signal is so spotty. But I did finally arrive home, so I'm kind of on it. I find it when I put the phone. So I'm gonna try to keep it up high. So I wanted to go back and reflect on what you said, Michael, about NBC.
Okay.
Because you had said that what came up for you with NBC was the judgments versus feelings, and it brought up for me a conversation that you had posted on Facebook, and you write down like the judgments and the feelings and the facts. I can't remember which order, but I remember very, very distinctly that I was able to connect with your feeling more than the other things, because like the facts, you know, nobody can argue with that, and there's different like interpretations of facts. But also like with the judgments, it's like that's something that you can argue about, right? And it's
Absolutely.
subjective. But the
Yeah.
feelings are like, yeah, I can't argue with your feelings. Like that's how it is. And I can. So I just, yeah, and that's part of why I love it so much, because it's like, so are you guys ready to get I'm just gonna stay here because I'm getting good signal, okay?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ray.
You
And
guys
what?
still hear me okay?
Let's try it. Go ahead. I did hear you. Okay. Before you went off. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Are you complete?
I am with that. I don't know if you wanted to, if you wanted me to share about curiosity. I can't quite remember what the prompt was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'll also say in response to what you were saying as well too, is that emotional awareness is one of my core values. So thank you for reflecting back that you connected more to the feelings, because I think if there were more, if there were more conversations where feelings were allowed to be honored and allowed to be heard, I think we would. I think we could resolve conflicts a lot faster. So thank you for that. So the prompt for the curiosity question was, what are you most curious about exploring together? That may have been inspired by these conversations.
I think I'm really curious to see where we go, like what we do next, and how this group evolves. I, again, like feel really open to whatever people want to do in whatever capacity for. But I think that just makes the curiosity even greater, because we can do a lot of things, and I'm excited to see what that is.
I'm sorry, you broke up quite a bit there at the end of that. Can you say that last part again? Oh, okay, so we lost Ray. Okay, so all right, so we'll push on. Two more values I wanted to just talk about before we get into the final part of this conversation. But some of the values that I'll say this: the value that was the most challenging, one of the most challenging ones, which also kind of corresponded with the action step that was the most challenging. I've noticed that whenever the question is posed about bringing this to an organization or bringing this to an established organization, that there's a lot of resistance there. There is some resistance to this idea of community. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. We did discuss that in a previous conversation. But one thing that I've been noticing is that, especially in my world, Oh, hi Ray, welcome back. Yep. So what I've been noticing, actually Ray, yeah, no, I'll continue that thought. What I've been noticing with organizational culture, I've been finding that especially the younger people, and when I say younger people, I'm speaking in terms of younger than me. I'm 48. There seems to be this, this resistance to organizational culture. So I just wanted to see if any of you resonate with that, or you feel that that's a validating thing. But yeah, there seems to be this resistance and this barrier when it comes to going into an established community, or trying to communicate with an organization. I just wanted to hear if anyone had any thoughts or feelings about that. Oh, and now you're all frozen.
What do you mean by established community?
Well, mostly any kind of organization. I mean, in my case, it's been nonprofits. Working with different nonprofit organizations, where it's taken me 2 years with Circle of Miracles, for instance, to kind of have a lot of this work now start to be meaningful and start to resonate. I worked with the Phoenixville Time Bank now for 5 years, and it resonated with the younger people, but the older people couldn't get rid of me fast enough. So, so that's just been my experience with it.
Just so I understand, so are you saying like there's resistance from the younger people to bring this kind of stuff to like organizations and like established communities, or there is like resistance from the like organizations with like the older versus the younger type?
I've observed both.
I think from the younger perspective, it typically tends to be that, I think especially I would say for like millennials,
Mhm.
very much are in the generation that have experienced a lot of like the harm and malcontent and things that can happen when you try to you try to do this kind of stuff in an organized like an already established organized community or organization that contains a lot of pre-millennials, basically, because we have all either grown up with those generations and had to deal with their resistance to change of any kind, and their like opinions that were all too soft or sensitive, or we need to this or that, or like all of these things, and they're just sort of like a little bit out of touch with the reality of what it's like for the rest of us now in the way that society currently is and going. For the older generation, I think that's partly what it is from my perspective of like, I was raised by my grandparents and they were in their 50s, like late 50s or late 60s when they got custody of me. So I spent most of my formative years around people from the ages of like 58 to like 80. And the thing that I always kept seeing was like a lot of these people already kind of had their lives established and they had their nest egg set away and all of these things. So like even being elderly, there wasn't that like grab for money and that stress about like how am I going to pay bills and stuff, and how am I going to survive, and how am I going to buy groceries, and how am I going to do this, that, and the other. And so it was really hard for them to understand the struggles of like the younger generations, of like the pressure of social media and all these different things. And so for them, it just really felt like this generation was just so dramatic and so sensitive, and like, you know, we had no idea how hard they used to work and what they had to go through. And I think too, on the side of the younger generation, because we were so wrapped up, I think, in our own stresses, we actually didn't take the time to like stop for a minute and like try to listen to the older generation and hear the stuff that they talked about. Because I think if we had maybe taken just a tiny bit more time to like listen to the things that they went through, the experiences they had, the way that they, even for example, like used to have to do laundry. Like I can't imagine having to work a regular work day now and then come home and have to use iron washboard to like have clothes for the next day. Like that is, but like that's stuff they had to do, right? Where they'd have to work in like fields, say, all day long, doing this backbreaking, toiling labor, harvesting crops, growing crops, whatever it may be, and then come home and like sit over a giant wooden basin with this like metal rack and just like scrub all of the clothes and then wring them all out. Like, and I think if there was a better way for both sides to kind of, it's always to me, from what I've always seen, it always comes down to this place of like, both sides are actually talking about similar struggles and emotions. They just don't speak the same language. It's like everyone's speaking the same base language, but they're not speaking the same language. Like, you know, the older generation will be like, well, in my day, we didn't get to take mental health breaks. And the younger generation hears that as like, you don't care about my feelings. You think I'm, but what the older generation is actually trying to say is like, I don't understand what's happening with you right now, because in my day, if we had done those things, we would have died, or we would have been cast out of society, or we would have been ridiculed, or like our families would have disowned us. And it's like, if they said it that way, the younger generation would be like, oh my God, whoa, like, wait a minute. So you're saying that if you had had this breakdown and needed to like take time off work, your families would have just like thrown you out of the house? Yeah, that's what would have happened. What the hell? And then it would be like, oh, no wonder you are the way you are then. No wonder you think we have it so easy, because like, yeah, we're going through our struggles. But then if we were to say like, you know how you would find days where you have to work all day long and you come home and your brain is so tired and exhausted that you can't even just get up and get yourself a drink from the kitchen. And they would be like, yeah, I remember that. That's how I wake up in the morning. Like literally, I wake up feeling that way. And no matter what I try to do, I can't make those feelings go away. I actually think the older generation would be like, oh, well, why? Like they might actually be able to like hear better and like ask questions that are more curious, especially if they themselves felt heard and understood. I don't know. That's just sort of my take on that.